unemployment and representation are some of the key problems that Kenya is currently grappling with. In recognition of this, the government has made deliberate efforts to develop programs and policies to address these problems. Having run for years now, the question of how effective and responsive to the needs and aspirations of the youth these programs and policies are arises as the rate of unemployment continues to grow and youths remain marginalized in decision-making processes. It is against this background that CTL under the USAID ACT funded project dubbed Tuhusike towards improving youth programs and policies undertook a baseline survey. Bansi Kubudha is the Executive Director, Center for Transformational Leadership.
Center for Transformational Leadership is a local NGO based in Nakuru County. Our program areas are democracy and governance, leadership development, and research and policy. At CTL, we envision a transformed society upholding values of good governance. Our work basically focuses on achieving 3 objectives: strengthening organizational leadership, promoting youth civic responsibility, and preparing youth for responsible leadership.
Tuhusike Project was aimed at improving youth programs and policies.
So in 2012, CTL received funding from USAID through ACT to undertake a project dubbed Tuhusike towards improving youth programs and policies.
Some of the Tuhusike Project's objectives included ensuring that the government policies and programs are responsive to the needs and aspirations of the youth. The project also aimed at increasing representation and participation of the youth in governance and decision-making process at local and national level.
Through this project, CTL wanted to advocate for improvement of youth policies and programs to make them more responsive to youth needs and aspirations. CTL looked at the existing government programs that are ongoing, including Youth Enterprise Development Fund and Kazi kwa Vijana, and identified gaps that needed to be addressed to make those programs more responsive.
The project took the idea of empowering youth to take a lead in advocacy as its major approach. Research and awareness creation, capacity strengthening of the youth groups through training, mentorship and networking, and advocacy mainly by engaging with the policymakers at local level were among other project's approaches.
The overall goal of the Tuhusike project was basically to improve the socio-economic status of youth in Nakuru County, and the purpose was to reduce the vulnerability of youth to manipulation through capacity building and creating platforms through which they could dialogue with policymakers on development and implementation of youth policies and programs.
The project targeted youth from Nakuru, Molo and Kresoi, engaging them in activities like baseline survey to determine awareness levels of youth, policies and programs and their effectiveness in addressing youth problems.
In implementing the Tuhusike project, CTL used a bottom-up approach that involved empowering youth to take a lead in the advocacy effort, building the capacity of youth groups through training, mentorship and networking, and advocacy through creating platforms for youth to engage with policymakers at local level.
We noticed that the youth intervention by the government that had the highest awareness level in the youth was the Kazi kwa Vijana, popularly referred to as KKV, at over 60%. However, surprisingly, most of the youth are not aware of the existence of the DYOs, the district youth officers, and we found that to be at 44%. Now, the other surprising thing was that only 30% of youth are aware of the National Youth Policy, which is an important program by the government that targets intervention in the affairs of the youth. Now, when it comes to participation of the youth in the creation, in the formulation of these policies, only 39% participated in program design of the National Youth Policy, despite the fact that the Ministry of Youth Affairs claimed to have put out a participatory process in the design of that same program. Now, when we come to the report per se, it had some gaps. One of the most significant gaps is that we are now in an election year, and we may have a change of government. And as per the constitutional provisions, the number of ministries is going to be reduced from the current 40 to less than that. And the sustainability of the Ministry of Youth will be at the whims of whoever will be designing or determining the number of ministries. So we are not sure whether the Ministry of Youth will continue to exist in its current formulation, or it may even be reduced into a department, into another ministry. What that tells us is that there is no transition mechanism for the ministry and the policies that this ministry is supposed to spearhead in intervening in youth affairs in this country. Another major shortcoming, particularly in terms of the national youth policy, is that the policy dictates that it was supposed to be reviewed every 5 years. However, since its formulation, 5 years has passed and it has not been reviewed. And one of our recommendations in the report is that the national youth policy should be reviewed with immediate effect. And to forestall such situations in the future, it will be important that any program or policy that intends at intervening in the situation, in the youth situation, should be anchored in law, so that whatever it's supposed to carry out has strict timelines and implementation parameters. Now, we also found out that in our review that most of these policies are not integrated into the general national development policies. Except for a mention in the Vision 2030, most of the interventions are ad hoc measures like the Kazi kwa Vijana and so on. What we recommend is that these policies be embedded in the institutions and be anchored into law as much as possible. Finally, I think what we can say is that in our report we state that investing in the youth is not an alternative. It is supposed to be an inevitability, because the youth are the future of this country.
After the survey was concluded, we undertook awareness creation workshops and radio talk shows to create awareness on youth programs and policies. After that, CTL identified young people from the 3 project areas who would play the role of advocacy champions. And CTL took them through an advocacy training for 3 days to provide them with skills and tools to conduct advocacy at local level. After that, CTL also facilitated advocacy meetings with policy actors and created a platform for youth to engage with both existing policy actors and aspiring policy makers through public forums dubbed Vikao vya Umma.
The training, as explained by the project's Assistant Director Christabel Baraza, was a successful one.
The selection process was vigorous, as we took them through an interview and we selected 2 advocates from each ward. Initially, we had planned to have 1-day trainings for the specific constituencies, but we changed that into a 3-day comprehensive training because we felt that we needed these advocates to grasp the information we wanted them to.
At the end of the day, a draft advocacy plan that was aimed at developing an engagement with the policy makers was formed. This was one major success among many others.
One of the most notable effects or results that this project has delivered is to improve the capacity of the young people to advocate for issues relating to their concerns. And we've seen this happen through the increased number of youth applying for the Youth Development Enterprise Fund, the number of youth going to the youth offices, having discussions with the district youth officers, and more often than not, those who go to seek for information about existing opportunities. In addition, we've seen youth developing a keen interest in the operations of CDF, and a few cases come to point. Example being a group in Kuresoi that has applied to supply seedlings for an environmental project being funded by CDF. That, to us, as those concerned with the delivery of the project, is a plus in the sense that, unlike before, we now see that they've identified existing opportunities and they are now ready and willing to tap into those opportunities. In addition, we've seen quite a number of youth, having identified opportunities for representation who are going for elective positions. One would say it's as a result of the political wave, but again, to us, we really attribute it greatly to the kind of awareness that we did under the project. Not to forget the fact that there was a capacity building component in the project, which involved imparting skills on advocacy, group building and organization. And the groups that we targeted, the individuals that participated in this training have acquired the skills that they've exhibited, even the manner in which right now they're following up on the identified issues. So Tuhusike, while it had as its primary focus, it sought to empower youth, it sought to mobilize young people, to identify opportunities that exist in existing programs, as served an additional role of developing capacities now to move ahead and tap into those opportunities. And though it's quite early now to measure the impact, but we believe the effects are visible. We are seeing them.
After we came for the training by CTL on Tuhusike Project, we were empowered as a group of Inter-Africa. We later moved to and form network with other youths, whereby we managed to write a proposal to CDF, and later on we were allocated 1 million shillings. And then we as Inter-Africa later on advocated on the right of 10% allocation on procurement to the youth. We actually educated or we informed at length the SLDF at the executive level, whereby they later on managed to allocate us a tender on supply of materials to Setkodes Girls Secondary School. And as of to date, the money, the check has been written to a group, and we are yet to supply the materials.
After that training, we've gone to talk to our people on representation and many various things facing the youth in our community. And I want to say that it has brought a lot of impact to us. We went to our administration offices, we talked to our assistant chiefs, our councillors, and by now we have a change towards youth representation in our place and through that advocacy. I want to say that after the advocacy training, we got representation in various places like LASDAB in our area. We've realized that we have a lot of things to do as youth in order to get our positions, as we involve ourselves in various things to make sure that we are represented or we have our people speaking about our issues. One thing is about the place where the chief was to get people into his meetings. This is when we visited him, we are now in a position of getting into those meetings for the chief. At the same time, when we had a program of getting a social hall, by now we have representatives who are going to get to that program to build as a program, and we have that social hall, and we have now over 10 million to build that program. I think to that extent we want to say that CTL has brought us a lot of things, and it has changed our minds on how youth should get to their positions as in representation through advocacy.
Wakati ambapo tulikuja katika training, at first hatukuwa na relationship story in our group, tulikuwa na gaps mingi, especially communication. The business that tulianza kama group na mambo mingi, but after the training tuliweza kuenda nyumbani na our group, and we had a meeting whereby tuliweza kufanya reconciliations as members of the group. Tukawa tumebreak hiyo gap ya miscommunication na misunderstanding in the group. And then another thing ambayo tuliweza come up with, tuliweza decide kama group ya kwamba ni vyema to change mradi ambayo tuko nayo, or the business that we have, and we came up with an idea ya
kufanya viazi, na another one kufanya biashara between us, youth group ya Nyota na another youth group in Nakuru Tower. So we shall be supplying milk from Kuresoi, and then our colleagues ama group ingine ambayo tuli network nayo hapa Nakuru watakuwa wanatusaidia kuuza hizo maziwa.
Through these youths being in this meeting, they will be able to get more information on employment opportunities and other many issues that could arise through these chief barazas.
Working with CTL has really brought a lot of impact to the Kuresoi youths. For instance, having them register as voters so that they can vote in a youthful person who is going to bring change to them, to the community, the society, as well as their sub-location at large. Then another thing is the inquiry of information from the youth office about the youth fund, about the different government programs and how they can benefit from them. And so far from July last year, we've issued 50 checks to 16 youth groups in Kuresoi district for the Rausha loan. And also one group managed to get the Inua loan, which is 100,000 shillings. And I believe out of the government representation of the youths are now vying for the leadership positions as partaking with the new constitution. Some of them want to be MCAs, some of them want to be ward representative, or also to represent the youths in the different committees from the sub-location up to the district levels. And now that the National Youth Council has come to an end, we have youths from the sub-location up to the national level who are representing their own youths. And now they would want to know if there is a youth representing them in a committee, how was the youth selected, how was the youth selected, and how did he come to be the person who is representing them in the different committees. And I believe if CTL could continue with their program, more youths would really turn the face of their potential.
Kutoka tuanze kuwork na CTL, our group imechange a lot kwa sababu mwanzo it was like kila kitu ilikuwa through the chairperson, yeye ndiye alikuwa anasema everything, alikuwa final kwa kila kitu, but since tuende hizo training za exchange programs with other groups, tulirealize ya kwamba duties sio mtu mmoja peke yake ako supposed kuwa like a commander, whereby kila mtu at least akuwe na some responsibilities kwa group. Na tulikaa chini kama group, tukachange some of our rules and regulations, tukaassign some members their duties, na kutokea hapo hivyo at least tumeimprove saizi, tunawork poa, hatuna stress saizi. At least hata project yetu imesimama, whereby kila youth anajua umuhimu ya hiyo project. Tuko na tree nursery inaendelea saizi, unlike hapo nyuma ilikuwa inafifia kiasi, but kutoka tupate mafundisho kwa CTL tumeimprove kabisa, na saizi at least our group iko focused, na tunaamini ya kwamba in 1 year time tutakuwa tumeanza kusupply our tree nurseries.
Kenyan population of around 40 million people consists of 70% youth. The youth all around the country have very related advocacy concerns. As explained by the Nakuru District's Youth Officer William Migwi, youth skills training has been highlighted as one of the ways that can save this huge population.
We have programs where they can go and attend their training at the youth polytechnics. That is where they're going to acquire more skills in vocational skills in areas of motor engineering, tailoring, fashion and design, hairdressing, refrigeration, and many other courses. But the big issue here, quite a number of the young people are not able to access this information,
owing to the fact that a good number of youth that graduate from primary school every year do not get an opportunity to go to secondary schools. There is a dire need to create more polytechnics in this region.
So we still need more of these polytechnics where our young people can go and acquire these skills.
Health-related training is another issue that the district youth offices are giving a priority. Entrepreneurial skills and environment issues are two other concerns of the Ministry of Youth in the region.
The biggest problem with the young people is access to proper information. So if we can go back there in the mashinani on the localities and we really do a lot of advocacy on information, what are the services that are there for the young people, I'm very, very sure that they are going to gain more information and able to know the kind of services that they can of benefit to them.
I've managed to do an advocacy courtesy of CTL. I went to visit the municipal council over the environment issue and see if we can talk and create employment for the youth. It was quite good. The response in the offices were good. We were received well. The opportunities were explained, and it occurred to us that we only didn't know which doors to knock and how to knock. But when we did, opportunities arose.
Our young people should not be job seekers, but should be job creators.
And this has motivated the youths in my area in a way that they are now doing cleanups, they are cleaning the drainages, and this is what they did their proposals on and were promised to be funded. This is the first time this is happening in my community and the first time that the youths have been engaged and are helping in creation of employment for themselves. The Deputy Town Clerk has also promised on a directive which is going to ensure that the youths are fully engaged in all their processes, in identification of projects and their implementation. This will help in enhancing youth participation in government projects and processes, and this will also help in creation of employment because they are now fully aware, thanks to CTL, which doors to knock, how to knock, and how to go about getting the opportunities available. The opportunities are there. It's just the youth to go and get them. Thank you.
Center for Transformational Leadership tried to evaluate some of these programs we carry out with the youth. And there were many advocacy issues, concerns raised by the youth. One of these is that there is very low participation by the youth in these programs in the form of formulation of the policies, implementation of the policies, and even evaluating those policies. Now, this is true, and it was an eye-opener to many of us who attended some of the programs and forums that were carried out by the Center for Leadership, Transformational Leadership. Now, we have realized that even offices, many youth do not know where the youth offices are. Many youth do not even know where the youth officers are situated, and even they can't even know their names, which was very, very bad. We realized that even our programs, such as Kazi kwa Vijana, which we thought almost all the youth know how they are being carried out, and policies that govern Kazi kwa Vijana programs are not known. So it helped us also to know that we need to go a step higher to involve as many youth as possible, to sensitize them, use many forums such as the radio, the media, have many forums where we can engage the youth in policy formulation, talking to them, youth chiefs, barazas, any other forum where we can sensitize the youth on some of the programs we do. Otherwise, one of the things that came out is that many youth do not know what we do as a ministry or as a department of youth development. So this project has helped us a lot. It has helped us to go back on the drawing board to see which other media we can use to engage the youth. And that's where we lend out money. That's why we train on entrepreneurship. That's why we give them soft loans. That is why we start youth circles so that they can be self-employed. So I will say that the project exposed many weaknesses in our department that we shall, as a department, try to address, how we can engage the youth in policy formulation, implementation, how we can engage the youth in many other areas so that they know where we exist, how we exist, and what we can do for them. because most of them were operating at the point of ignorance, and we think that with time we shall explore many venues and many avenues where the youth can also become part and parcel of our program implementation program.
Our journey with the CTL has been a fruitful journey. We have seen the number of young people raising queries about youth fund. We have received a petition from youth leaders in Molo requesting for more interactive facilitation from youth fund. Through this, we have been able to have projects in the area. We have had trainings of youth in youth polytechnics. We have also been able to organize for trade fairs in Molo. Concerning the level of awareness, we have seen more and more young people coming to ask about youth fund products. We have seen more young people taking up loan application forms and applying for funds. We have also held meetings with CTL. We have had stakeholders workshops which have been fruitful, that have shed more light to us on issues affecting young people within this region.
To conclude the Tuhusike Project, CTL organized a stakeholders roundtable meeting, and there were a few things that came out of that meeting as a way forward. The first one is the need to review the national youth policy, and we at CTL are urging the government and stakeholders working in the youth sector to come up with ways to ensure that the national youth policy is reviewed immediately and use the available structures like the YYC and the National Youth Council to capture the input of young people to ensure that the policy that we come up with for the next 5 years reflects and addresses youth issues. The other thing is the need for a Nakuru Youth Stakeholders Network, which would be a platform for youth organizations working in the county to come together and see how we can address the problems of youth unemployment and representation in Nakuru County. As we move to the county system of government, there is need to ensure that youth are represented in various committees at the county assembly, either through election or through appointment to different committees, and that requires that young people organize themselves and lobby for such positions. The policy analysis undertaken by CTL revealed that the Youth Enterprise Development Fund has already taken the initiative to safeguard or to legally protect the fund. And there is already a youth enterprise bill in place which has already been presented to the cabinet as a memo. We feel at CTL that there is need for youth input in that bill, and therefore there is need for stakeholders working with the young people in the country, Moyas and the Youth Enterprise Development Fund to spearhead these efforts, to organize youths in different counties to make their inputs in that bill, so that at the end of the day, when the bill is debated in Parliament, we get a bill that is responsive to the youth needs and is effective in addressing the problems of youth unemployment and representation.